Okay, good morning, class. Gonna spend a few minutes here going over how to write the book critique. I know these video lectures are probably not super exciting as is, and unfortunately can't really promise lots of super exciting content here. But what I can promise is that if you pay attention to what I'm about to say, it will increase your chances of earning a higher grade on the book critique. So that tends to be something people care about. And so hopefully uh, watching this will be a good thing. Also, and again, by definition, I'm going to be speaking to the choir here. But those of you who are watching, even within a few days of March 9th, that's exactly what you should be doing. That is watching this before you start reading Brooks and Woolforth, because if you wait to do that, or wait to watch this until after you've started reading, that'll be less efficient, less productive. So I would also still recommend, and by the way, tell a friend is really the moral of what I was about to say there. But I would also still, even though you have the slides here, I guess you could print out the slides. I don't know how that works with the video, but I would still take some careful notes and use those notes because you don't want to have to watch this again because that would be even worse. Okay, so jumping right in. There are three parts to the assignment, as you will have seen. So the assignment is posted in the files section of Blackboard, Canvas, excuse me, files section of Canvas. So three sections. So I'm going to have a slide for each section and then a slide on details. And then hopefully that's going to exhaust everything. But like always, you can post a question. You can post a question in reply to the link that I posted in the discussion, the link that you're watching this through. And I will get back to anybody who posts any questions there. You can also come on to my Skype office hours. Once again, Tuesday, Thursday, 8 to 9, and 1:45 to 3:15. The Skype name is Jason William Davidson. Okay, so as I said before, three parts, and you will see that from the assignment sheet as well. First part is a summary. Like last time, I'm giving you what we call the rubric. That is, what are the points associated with each section? And there are 40 points associated with the summary. So if you flip down to the bottom of the assignment there, you're going to see that the assignment is a one-page book critique. So of that one page, 40% is what you're going to get from a points perspective from the summary. So the summary should be roughly 40% of your total paper. Now, some of you are going to look at this and you're going to say, one page book critique. That's awesome. This is going to be so easy. I'm going to, look at some summary I can find online of the book, and, spin that out for a couple sentences and won't even have to read it. Piece cake. No, you should be treating this as, something that is very difficult. It's very challenging to do well on this assignment because you've got to cram a whole lot into a very small space. In this case, you got to cram an entire summary of a rather lengthy book. I mean, shouldn't say lengthy, short to medium length book, but still, you've got to cram a complete summary of that book into 40% of a page. So that's kind of a challenge. All right, two principles to be thinking about in terms of your summary. The summary should be as detailed as possible. That is, it shouldn't be vague. Every sentence should be giving me specific indicators of content of the book. So that's ideas, that's evidence or examples. You can do that in terms of facts. You can do that in terms of quotations. I would have a mix of those. Remember, just in terms of both of these things, the kind of global nature and the detail nature, what you want to try to do is show me in writing this summary that you have read the whole book, right? So this is not a summary of chapter 1. This is not a summary of the first 2 pages and the last 2 pages of the book. This is a summary of the entire book. So providing as much detail is a way it's got to be relevant detail. It can't just be, you flip open the book to page 74 and you find an anecdote and you throw that into your book critique. It's got to be relevant to the overall story that you're telling. Okay, but as much detail as possible. Again, detail, by detail, I mean ideas, I mean specific evidence that the author cites, and those can be facts, they can be quotations, right? Some mix of those different things in terms of details of the entire book. That leads us nicely into the next point. The summary should cover the entire book. So there should be something on all parts of the book. When I look at talk about citations in a second, one way to know if you've done this well is look at your own citations when you're done and see if those citations cover the entire book. If I get citation, first of all, if I get 1 or 2 citations and it's like 4, 8, right? That tells me that somebody flipped open the book, they read the first 2 pages, and let alone if it's like from the preface, and that constitutes their summary, right? A good global summary will have page numbers essentially covering the entire book in order, right? That's really what it should be. With more, and this is the trick, and again, the challenge, the reason why this is not an easy assignment is for you to figure out what's more important and what's less important. I'm going to try to do some of that with the questions that I'm going to pose to kind of hint you in that direction. I will be also replying to any answers that we get. If we don't get any answers, I won't be saying anything, but I will be replying to any answers, particularly correcting for any mistakes or pointing out any mistakes that I see. And also trying to use those questions to emphasize which parts of the book are more important and which parts are less important. But the idea still is to provide a global summary of the book. So as detailed as possible and as global global. So it needs to cover the whole book. The next thing to say is that, of course, this is not for you to, read the book, step back, have deep thoughts, and then just let a stream of consciousness unflow onto the page. This is you sitting there working with the book very carefully, find a critical point that the book is making, what is the big point of chapter 2, points, whatever, depending on how important it is. And then each of those points, each of those sentences should have a citation. So every single reference to the book and anything other than the core thesis of the book, and even the core thesis of the book for our purposes, everything should have a citation. The more citations I see, the more detail I know that you're providing, the more of a thorough and global summary do I know that you're providing. If I see 1 or 2 citations, that means you've provided 1 or 2 bits of things from the book, and everything else that I see in a paragraph is you just, expanding or ruminating on that, which is not the assignment, right? The assignment is really at least in this section, is you summarizing the book in as detailed a fashion as possible, as thorough a fashion as possible, and as global as possible. Like last time, but just a reminder, because I did have some people, certainly not a majority problem, which is good, but just a reminder that citation does mean endnote, footnote, or parenthetical citation. If you're using endnote or footnote, you provide full publication details of, in this case, Brooks and Wohlforth's book in the first reference, and then after that you can write Brooks and Wohlforth, America Abroad, 37 is the page number. First one also would include a page number. Page numbers are going to be important in all your citations, because if you're making a specific point about a specific thing, I need to know where to find that in the book, right? It makes no sense at all for you to just say Brooks and Wohlforth, right? People who turn in a paper either with a summary that has no citation or a summary that just says Brooks and Wohlforth will be severely penalized. So don't do that. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Yes. Okay. So, why am I, this is normally something I say at the beginning, but a little off my game doing this digitally instead of in person. So now's a good time to address why I'm doing this. So one of the critical kind of purposes of this, I mean, I think the book is on a very important topic, and you will see when you start to dig into it. It's a topic that's really been a big debate, and certainly President Trump has at least some affinity with certain elements of one side in this debate on American grand strategy. So the topic is important, but why am I having us read a book like this about American foreign policy at the end of the semester? Well, the idea is that the things that you have learned in the course of this semester will allow you to better digest and understand a book like this than you would have been able to do when the semester started. That is, it's going to make more sense to you all things held equal. And yes, I know we have the future IA majors that are in the class that probably would have done okay with a book like this before taking the class, but hopefully those people are a little better at making sense of it. And then hopefully most of the rest of you are going to, notice a difference relative to if you had read it earlier in the semester. That's the goal, at least. I don't know if that works out in practice, but that's the goal. So one of the things that's really critical about the assignment is part 2, which is where you relate the book to the course. That is designed to make you explicitly think about, okay, as you're reading through, here's a concept that I know we talked about in class, and I already knew what that concept was. Or maybe you have to take a little bit of a look at Goldstein, PV House, or Mixon Snyder. You're like, oh yeah, I now remember what that was when we talked about it in class. Interdependence, globalization, deterrence, balance of power, right? Lots of different things maybe that we would have talked about in class. Okay, so let me now get a little bit more specific of what I'm looking for. So first of all, my recommendation would be 2 non-trivial concepts, and I'm going to say what non-trivial concepts is, but just briefly on 2. 1, if you nail 1, that would probably put you like in the C range. I would say even if you want a C, don't risk it, because it's often the case that you don't nail the one that that is the first one that comes to mind. So putting you into 2, first of all, 2 pretty good, then you're in the B range, and then if you nail 2, that's what you need to get an A. 3 tends to be too many just because you don't have the space, unless you're incredibly good at writing concisely. And some of you, I'm not going to say that there's nobody in the room, in the class, who's capable of that. So, use your own judgment on 2 versus 3. But I'll say a little bit more about this. This is a couple of the sentences per concept is what you're going to need to do here in order to do this well. Non-trivial. What does non-trivial mean? Well, what I'm not looking for here is for somebody to say, well, professor, this book is about international relations, and our course is called Intro to International Relations, therefore they're related. Or something like, we talked about U.S. foreign policy in your class. This book is about U.S. foreign policy, therefore it's related. No. What I'm looking for is a specific concept. Think about an ID term. That's the best way to think about when I say non-trivial concept. The idea is, 1, this is a concept that most of you didn't know before you started taking the class. 2, this is a class that the average person walking down the street in Fredericksburg or wherever you guys are would not know what that concept is. So, again, interdependence maybe is an example. Nuclear deterrence, mutually assured destruction. Those are examples, right? What else did I want to say? So you want to think about concepts like that. These are the concepts. These are the kind of concepts, like I said, that you would develop in a list of terms when you're studying for the exam. These are things that would be hint in the index of Goldstein and PV House, right? And that, by the way, is the easiest way to find said concepts once you bump into one through your reading. So at least 2 of these non-trivial concepts. And then what you're going to do for each of them is you're going to start by defining the term, right? Deterrence means, right? This term means, right? You're going to define it based on one of the texts. So either Goldstein, PV House, or Mason Snyder. What would absolutely 100% defeat the purpose, even though I get this every time, it would be for you to define it from Brooks and Wohlforth, right? No, that wouldn't relate it to the course. That would relate it to itself in Brooks and Wohlforth. So I want you, by using the definition from Goldstein and Peavey-House, or using the definition from Minks and Snyder, as the case might be, that would make that relationship somewhat explicit already in your mind, but at least it's a good start. So you're going to define it based on one of those texts, and then you're going to relate it to the book. Of course, when you use the definition from Goldstein and Peavey-House or the definition from Minks and Snyder for a particular concept, you must cite Goldstein and Peavey-House or Minks and Snyder. So in other words, to clarify, a check, note to self, big bold letters maybe at the top of your notes, you should have at least 2 and maybe 3 citations, everyone, right? There should be a citation, one, at least one, but no, multiple citations from Brooks and Wohlforth, right? Many, ideally. I'll get on the better papers here, I don't know, 15, right? Citations from Brooks and Wohlforth, but at least a citation or multiple citations from Brooks and Wohlforth. And then there should be at least one other citation, say Goldstein and Peavey-House for 2 terms, but if you need to draw on. Now, of course, given everything that I have said, what I am not looking for you to do here is say, okay, Davidson going over the assignment mentions term deterrence. Let me look at, Beavis's Guide to International Relations Online and find their definition of a deterrence. And I will cite that because now I understand about citation after losing points on the first. No. You must cite either Goldstein and Peavey-House or Minks and Snyder for the purposes of this section of the assignment. Okay. And as mentioned previously, citation is, of course, footnote, endnote, parenthetical. Once again, full publication details first time you cite it, if you're using endnote or footnote. And then always a relevant page number. Where is that citation in the text? Okay. I need those things. What else was I going to say? There's something else that came to mind on that. And a reminder just on parenthetical, because I don't think I said this when I went over the other, is that if you're using parenthetical, what you'll have is Goldstein and Peavey-House, comma 27. And then at the end of the document, you will have the full publication details for Goldstein and Peavey-House, right? And likewise, Brooks and Wohlforth, each mention, you'll have Brooks and Wohlforth 27. And then at the end, you'll have, right, full publication details for Brooks and Wohlforth. Okay, so critical analysis, last section, again, 30 points. So like with the last one, roughly a third of that page, right? And again, I'm not like going to measure with a ruler. It's just to tell you that if you've got a little tiny section at the very bottom for critical analysis, then you should say to yourself, nope, need to go back and make some adjustments and make the other sections a little shorter. That often takes editing, right? It takes very careful pruning of your words. How can I say the same thing with fewer words, right? That's a skill, and that's a skill we develop by practicing it. So I would definitely urge you to work on that. But this critical analysis is roughly a third. Okay. What am I looking for here? I'm looking for 2 or more. And again, I think most of you are probably 2 is a really good number, because unless you're very, very good at concise writing, if you try to offer more than 2, it's going to be hard to be as thorough as you need to be. Whereas if you offer just 1, it is really easy to not hit one of the ones that you offer, and then you're really in trouble. So I would shoot for at least 2 critiques. Now, these are critiques of the book's core argument, the book's sub-arguments, or fundamental aspects of the book's evidence. Some pitfalls to avoid. What I'm not looking for is for you to say, this book is perfect. This book changed my life. I learned so much. No. Every single book that I assign for this class, I assign some books that I kind of fundamentally agree with, some that I disagree with. It's irrelevant, the perspective that I have on it, but they all have flaws, and they all have things that you can critique about them, right? Every single book that I have ever assigned in the 20 years that I've been teaching at Mary Washington, and I always have assigned a book critique at the end of this class, right? So they all have flaws. They all have things that you can critique about them. So you can't say the book is perfect. You're not allowed to do that. The one thing you're allowed to do, this is a bit of a caveat here, but I'll mention this, is if you really, really fundamentally agree with the book, you still have to, and I would say, again, you need to do at least 2 of these, is say some might argue, and you offer a criticism, and then you say, however, I would respond with the following. Okay, just a note on this little option here, that takes more space because you've got to first articulate a critique and then respond to it. So it's much better just to generate a criticism from the beginning. If you're wondering to yourself, and for those of you who've started reading, I know probably not very many, but maybe a few, if you've started reading the book already and you're thinking, oh man, these guys are really smart, I don't know how I could possibly ever come up with a critique of this. I will, first of all, I am very hopeful. I know in class criticisms emerge. I am very hopeful that criticisms will emerge in online discussion. And if it doesn't, then I will sort of make some hints, at least, for some criticisms. I'll mention book reviews in a bit too, so that's a third possibility. One is just, things that you think of as you're reading through, but then, and then the online discussion, and then a third would be book reviews. It is fair, I will note, for you to exchange ideas. I don't want some big, large group, but if you have a friend or 2 friends in the class and you want to kind of bat ideas off of each other, that's fine, completely fine with me. In terms of critiques, what critiques you have, which ones you think are stronger, that is fine, that is appropriate. What I'm also not looking for is, this book is redundant. Okay, some of what authors have to do in a book like this is at least, to some extent, there's going to be some repeating of yourself, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to, the cover is ugly, I don't like it. I'm not looking to, if there's some minor point, like on page 112, that is not really germane to the rest of the book, that's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for these critiques that take on the book's core argument, the book's sub-argument, or the, fundamental elements of the book's evidence. Okay. For each of these critiques, the idea is this should be, somewhere between 2 and 3 sentences. I would err on the side of more rather than less. So unpack what your critique is. That's the best way to offer a thorough critique. If you offer 1 sentence, it's going to be less likely that you can unpack it, and so it's going to be much weaker if you just throw out a sentence, even if you have a pretty good idea that you're drawing on. So plan on developing that critique, teasing it out over a couple sentences, exactly what you mean by the problem that you find in the author's argument or evidence. So planning that, so we're looking at somewhere between 4 and 6 sentences for 2 critiques. Nobody is required to read or cite or read any book reviews of this book, right? That is not a requirement in this assignment. However, if you look online, you will find that there are a number of book reviews that are out there, and I believe readily accessible without paywalls and stuff. So if you choose to go that route, great. But I can't stress this enough. Cite the book review. This is actually a really good thing for you because it shows me, who's grading your paper, that you did extra work, that you actually went out and found a book review. What you never want to do is read a book review, say, oh, that's a really good critique. I think I'll just pretend that is my critique when I'm writing my paper. No, don't do that. First of all, it's plagiarism. But second of all, like I said, it actually is better if you show me that, in fact, you got this critique from somebody else, because it shows me that you didn't just sit back and go, you actually went and did more work. Again, that's not to say that you have to read a book review. I have plenty of students earn A's on this assignment with no book reviews cited. Okay, so, and it's not, necessarily the silver bullet, from a grade perspective, but it's just to say that if you do that, because some of you will probably feel some, anxiety about generating critiques or struggling a little bit with your critiques, and then if you do that, just cite it when you draw on it. Okay, last things. This is all real straightforward here. As I said before, no longer than 1 page with 1-inch margins and 12-point Times New Roman font. You may single space. You can do all the things we talked about last time in terms of, put your name in or title. You don't have to have a title page, but if you want a title, you can put your name and title in the header. Your citations, if you're using endnotes, doesn't make sense with footnotes, but if you're using endnotes, they may fall on a second page. If you're using parenthetical, your citations your list of works cited can fall on that second page. Just a reminder that, of course, I've said this multiple times already, but you have to cite all ideas and information that are not your own. Due at 8 a.m. on the 23rd, so that's the last day of official classes for our class. I suspect that none of you are waking up at 8 a.m. these days, so what that means is make sure that you send it the night before you go to bed. Do not rely on yourself to, out of the blue to wake up at 8 a.m. To send in. Please also, this is something that some of you found out before from the short analysis paper, the Livia paper. Please email me a copy in Microsoft Word, because I will probably give you a little fewer comments than I did last time, but I will be writing comments on these, and if you send it in PDF, I can't do that. So that's it. Again, post any questions that you have in the just as a reply to the discussion tab that I've already opened. And otherwise, happy reading, and we'll see you for the last lecture of the year next Tuesday. So in the meantime, as it's the weekend, stay off the drugs and don't forget to wash your hands.